Hi everyone, welcome back to Melissa's Kitchen Table. Here I'm just chopping up a handful of parsley and I'll be putting it into a bowl. I'm going to be mixing it with probably about a cup of breadcrumbs. These are unseasoned, but you can use seasoned or plain, whichever you prefer. And then I'll just mix the two together. You could add any type of seasonings to this that you would like. You could add salt, pepper, garlic, onion powder, whatever you prefer. In the next bowl, I'm going to be cracking one large egg. I'm going to poke the yolk and then beat the egg. And I add a little bit of water to this to thin it out. You could add milk as well. And then you just want to beat it until it comes together and it gets a little bit frothy. This mixture is going to be used to dip the pork chops in and then into the breadcrumbs. So here I have 2 pork loin boneless chops. They're about, well, this package was hard to open. I don't know what happened that week at Whole Foods. The meat was packaged quite weird. These pork chops are a center cut. There's not much fat on them. And they're about 1 inch thick. I'm going to split them down the middle, not on the fat side, on the other side. The fat side will stay together easier than the meat side would. So you're just going to butterfly it open, kind of like a book. You don't need to pound this out. And I'm going to go ahead and butterfly the second one. You just want to cut right down the middle. You want to try to have them even on both sides so it cooks evenly. Now I did wash my hands here. It looks like the video just went into the next part, but I did pause it because you want to be very sanitary when you're using raw pork. And because I didn't season the breadcrumbs or the eggs, I'm going to season the pork directly. So that's just a little bit of salt I'm sprinkling on the inside of it. And I'm going to use a little bit of garlic granules. You can use garlic powder. You could use fresh garlic too. That would be really good. And I'm going to use some onion granules. You could also use onion powder. You could also use a generic all-purpose seasoning. Those work well too. A lot of them do have MSG, so we tend not to use them. But we do have an all-purpose seasoning from Cabela's that is MSG free. We do like to use that on chicken. And I'm also going to put a little bit of grated Parmesan in the middle. That's where the Parmesan pork chop comes from. It's not your typical like chicken Parmesan where you're going to put a chunk of mozzarella on the top and melt it. It's just strictly Parmesan cheese. And I did end up putting some in the breadcrumbs as well. Now we're going to stuff the pork chops with baby kale. I had gotten it on sale last week. Usually I like to stuff, we use a lot of baby spinach, but we decided to buy kale that week and it actually came out really good. I'm glad we did. But you could always substitute spinach if you'd like. And then I just fold the one half of the pork chop over, closing it like a book. And the kale stays in really well. It doesn't fall out. And there's just Parmesan, so it's not going to ooze out like a cheddar would. And then I'm just going to take the pork chop, dip the whole thing in the egg batter, the egg mixture, shake off the excess, and then dip it into the breadcrumbs. I dip them twice. I put them back into the egg and back into the breadcrumbs. And now I'm going to go ahead and pour maybe a 1/4 cup of olive oil in a cast iron skillet. You can use a regular skillet. I like this one for frying. It holds the heat better. I have this on a medium heat so it doesn't cook too fast, but it nicely browns the pork. And I cooked it on each side about 5 minutes. And then I flipped it over and cooked it another 5 minutes. Now, this is optional, but I do like to do this so the whole pork chop is brown. I put it on its side. You can't do that if you're using a thinner pork chop, but because these are about 1 inch thick, you could easily do that. And then it'll toast all the sides of the pork chop as well. And then I just rotate it over. Just be gentle with it and do the next side. You don't want to just pick it up and throw it over because the coating could come off or you could tear the pork. You want to make sure that it's coated well. Now I'm going to be roasting these potatoes in the oven, so I'm going to go ahead and finish the pork chops in there. These are really thick, so they do take a little bit longer. And I'm just going to smash 2 cloves of garlic. And I'm just going to finish peeling that. And I'm going to finely mince it. Now I'm going to go ahead and saute the garlic in the oil that was left over from frying the pork chops. And again, it's still on medium. You don't want it on high or it'll burn the garlic. And if you burn garlic, it's going to taste bitter and you'd have to start over. You can't salvage burnt garlic. I'm going to go ahead and put in some chili flakes, and this is to taste. If you like it spicy, you could put more. If you don't like it spicy at all, you don't have to put any. You could also use cayenne. Sriracha would probably be good as well. That has some garlic in it. And then I'm using strained tomatoes in a jar. It's hard to see. There was a glare from the light trying to focus it in for you. These are my favorite type of tomatoes to use. I like them in the glass jars. But you can use any type of tomato product. You can use tomato puree. You can use crushed tomatoes. You could even use diced tomato if that's how you like sauce. And this is just a quick sauce to go over the pork chops when they're finished. So I use maybe a half a cup here, and that's for 2 pork chops. And just stir that around, get all the flavors meld together. And then you can season this. I seasoned it with a little bit of salt. You could add cracked black pepper. Again, you could put onion in here, garlic, whatever you want. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit of half and half. You could omit this if you don't want a blushed sauce. And I just did 2 rounds around the pan. It's probably about a 1/4 cup. And then just stir that in. I think I had alligator tongs that day. And to this, we're also going to be adding Parmesan cheese. You could wait until the sauce is on top of the pork chops and just put the Parmesan on top of it. But I figured I would just add it into the sauce. Either way, it'll taste the same. I figured I would use a spoon to break up that huge clump of Parmesan and mix it together. This would be really good with fresh grated Parmesan. Now, after these potatoes roasted for about 20 minutes on 450, it's hard to see this bottle as well, but this is white truffle oil. I think this bottle costs $10.99 at Whole Foods, and honestly, you use very little. I think this was 3 potatoes, and I used maybe a teaspoon of truffle oil. And this one is not the highest quality, but it is so much better than buying a very cheap version or a flavored oil. There's a big difference. For many years, we wouldn't eat truffle oil until I had it at a restaurant, and it was really good. So as you can see, the pork chops were $165, and I'm just going to cut into it just to show you. I would let them rest probably 5 minutes before doing that. And you can see the inside, it's still a little bit pink. You have the kale that cooked down, so it's nice and tender. And then you have the crispy outer coating. And I would add the sauce on top right as you're serving, otherwise it'll make the crust on the pork chop soggy, and you don't want that. And put as much or as little sauce as you want. And like I said, you could go ahead and put the Parmesan on top of this. And then we just paired it with the truffled potatoes and a little bit of broccoli and cauliflower.